November 12, 1983. The Beverly Hilton Hotel. The sudden impact premiere after-party was in full swing when drunk actor Bradley Hartwell made the biggest mistake of his life. Looking directly at Clint Eastwood's wife Maggie, he made a crude comment so offensive that the entire conversation around them stopped dead. What happened next wasn't just swift justice sin. It was a demonstration of why some lines should never be crossed, and why Clint Eastwood's quiet reputation masked something far more dangerous than most people realized. Within 6 months, Bradley Hartwell would be completely unemployable in Hollywood, his career destroyed so thoroughly that he would never work in entertainment again. This is the story of what happens when stupidity meets consequence and why disrespecting a legend's family is the fastest way to discover what merciless really means. Bradley Hartwell was a rising star in 1983. At 28, he had appeared in 3 successful action films, was being considered for leading roles in major productions, and had developed a reputation as Hollywood's newest bad boy. Bradley was talented, but he was also arrogant and reckless, recalled former casting director Marion Dougherty. He thought his success meant he could say or do anything without consequences. Hartwell had a serious drinking problem that he made no effort to hide. He showed up drunk to premieres, made inappropriate comments during interviews, and treated industry events like fraternity parties. Bradley was the kind of actor who confused publicity with talent, explained former agent Mike Ovitz. He thought being controversial made him interesting when it really just made him unprofessional. The premiere party for Sudden Impact was supposed to be a celebration of Clint's latest Dirty Harry film. The ballroom was filled with industry executives, fellow actors, and entertainment journalists. Clint was there with his wife Maggie, a former model who had always supported his career while maintaining her own dignity and grace. Maggie Eastwood was one of the most respected women in Hollywood, recalled producer Jennings Lang. She was beautiful, intelligent, and completely devoted to her family. Everyone liked and respected her. The incident that would end Bradley Hartwell's career began around 10:30 p.m. when Hartwell had been drinking heavily for over 2 hours. Clint and Maggie were having a quiet conversation with director Don Siegel near the bar when Hartwell stumbled over, clearly intoxicated and looking for attention. Well, Hartwell said loudly enough for nearby conversations to stop. "If it isn't the man with no name and his lovely lady." Clint nodded politely. "Bradley enjoying the party?" "Oh, I'm enjoying it very much, especially the view." Hartwell's eyes moved to Maggie in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. "Your wife is absolutely stunning, Clint. I've always wondered what it would be like to Bradley." Clint interrupted quietly. "You should probably get some coffee and call it a night." But Bradley Hartwell was too drunk and too stupid to recognize the warning in Clint's voice. "Come on, Clint. We're all adults here. I'm just saying that Maggie is a very attractive woman, and if I were 20 years younger, I'd—" What Bradley said next was so crude and explicit that several people gasped audibly. The comment was not just inappropriate, it was vile, graphic, and directed specifically at Maggie Eastwood in front of her husband and a room full of their colleagues. The ballroom didn't go quiet gradually. It went silent instantly, as if someone had turned off the sound. Maggie's face went pale. Don Siegel looked shocked. Other nearby guests stared in disbelief at what they had just heard. But the most dangerous silence came from Clint Eastwood. For about 10 seconds Clint said nothing. He just looked at Bradley Hartwell with an expression that would have terrified anyone sober enough to recognize it. When Clint finally spoke, his voice was so quiet that people had to strain to hear him. "Bradley, you have exactly 5 seconds to apologize to my wife." Hartwell, too drunk to understand the situation he had created, laughed. "Apologize? For what?" "For noticing that you married a beautiful woman." 4 seconds. "Come on, Clint, lighten up. It was just a compliment." 3 seconds. "You can't seriously be upset about." 2 seconds. Finally, something in Clint's tone penetrated Hartwell's alcohol-soaked brain. But instead of apologizing, he made the decision that would destroy his life. "You know what, Clint? Maybe you should loosen up. Your wife is a grown woman. She can handle a little adult conversation." Clint never raised his voice. He never made a threat. He simply walked over to where Bradley Hartwell was standing and spoke directly into his ear, so quietly that no one else could hear what he said. But whatever Clint whispered to Bradley Hartwell drained the color from the young actor's face and made him take several steps backward. I think I should go," Hartwell stammered. "Yes," Clint replied in a normal voice. "You should. And Bradley, yeah? We'll be talking again very soon." Bradley Hartwell left the party immediately, and Clint returned to his wife and friends as if nothing had happened. But something had happened, something that would change Bradley Hartwell's life forever. Don't forget to comment below and let us know what other legendary Hollywood confrontations you'd like to hear about. What Clint had whispered to Bradley Hartwell remained a secret for years, but the consequences of that whisper began immediately. The next morning, Bradley's agent received a call from Clint's representatives, requesting a meeting to discuss Mr. Hartwell's unprofessional behavior. "I've never seen agents so nervous," recalled former William Morris executive Bodie Boatwright. "When Clint Eastwood's people call about your client's behavior, you know your client is in serious trouble." But the meeting with agents was just the beginning of Clint's response. Over the next several days, Clint began making quiet phone calls to directors, producers, and studio executives throughout Hollywood. He didn't ask anyone to blacklist Bradley Hartwell. He simply shared what had happened at the premiere party and let people draw their own conclusions. "Clint never demanded that people refuse to work with Bradley," explained former Warner Brothers executive Terry Semel. "He just made sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person they would be hiring if they chose to work with him." The effect was immediate and devastating. A leading role that Bradley had been negotiating for suddenly went to another actor due to creative differences. A television series that had been interested in casting him decided to go in a different direction. His own agency began quietly suggesting that he might want to consider taking some time away from the industry to work on personal issues. Bradley went from being a rising star to being professionally radioactive in less than 2 weeks, observed entertainment journalist Army Archard. Nobody wanted to risk their relationship with Clint Eastwood by working with someone who had insulted his wife. But Clint's response wasn't limited to professional consequences. Using his extensive network of contacts, Clint began sharing Bradley's behavior with anyone who had influence in the young actor's life. Bradley's landlord received information about his drinking and unreliable behavior. His car dealer learned about his professional problems. Even his favorite restaurants began treating him differently. Clint didn't just destroy Bradley's career, recalled former publicist Pat Kingsley. He systematically dismantled his entire life in Hollywood. It was thorough, methodical, and absolutely merciless. The most devastating blow came when the story of what had happened at the premiere party began circulating through Hollywood social circles. But the story that spread wasn't just about Bradley's crude comment, it was about Clint's whispered response. According to multiple sources who claimed to have been told by people who were there, Clint had whispered, "Bradley, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. By tomorrow morning, everyone in this town will know exactly what kind of man you are. And by next week, you'll discover what it means to cross someone who has more power than you ever imagined." Whether that was exactly what Clint said, nobody knew for certain, but the message was clear. Bradley Hartwell had picked a fight with someone who fought back with overwhelming systematic force. Bradley tried to salvage his career by apologizing publicly, claiming that he had been drunk and didn't remember making any inappropriate comments. But the damage was done. In Hollywood, reputation is everything, and Bradley's reputation was destroyed completely. Once the story got out that Bradley had insulted Maggie Eastwood at a public event, he became unemployable, explained former studio executive Sherry Lansing. Nobody wanted to work with someone who had shown such disrespect to one of the most respected women in the industry. By Christmas 1983, just 6 weeks after the premiere party, Bradley Hartwell had lost his agent, his publicist, and every pending job opportunity. By Valentine's Day 1984, he had left Los Angeles entirely, moving back to his hometown in Ohio. By his 30th birthday in 1985, He was working as a bartender in Cleveland, his Hollywood career a distant and painful memory. Bradley Hartwell never worked in entertainment again. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood's reputation was enhanced by how he had handled the situation. Clint showed everyone in Hollywood how to deal with someone who crosses a line, observed director Wolfgang Peterson. He didn't get emotional, he didn't make a scene, he just methodically eliminated the problem. Industry insiders understood that Clint's response had sent a clear message: disrespect his family and face complete professional annihilation. After what happened to Bradley Hartwell, nobody ever made inappropriate comments about Clint's family again, recalled former agent Mike Ovitz. Everyone understood that there would be consequences, and that those consequences would be permanent. The story became legendary in Hollywood circles as an example of how real power works in the entertainment industry. Clint didn't need to raise his voice or make threats, explained former Warner Brothers executive Robert Daly. He just used his influence systematically and thoroughly. It was more effective than any confrontation could have been. But perhaps the most telling aspect of the entire incident was how Clint had protected his wife's dignity while destroying the man who had insulted her. Maggie Eastwood never had to respond to Bradley's crude comment or defend herself against his behavior. Clint had handled everything so that she could maintain her grace and dignity. That's what real strength looks like, observed actress Glenn Close, who was at the party that night. Clint protected his wife's honor without putting her in the position of having to fight her own battles. In 1995, 12 years after the incident, a reporter asked Clint about his reputation for being merciless to people who crossed him. His response revealed both the depth of his convictions and the source of his legendary status. "I'm not merciless to people who disagree with me, or people who compete with me, or even people who don't like me, but I am merciless to people who disrespect my family. Maggie has always been there for me, supported my career, and conducted herself with dignity and grace. Anyone who thinks they can insult her without consequences has fundamentally misunderstood what kind of man I am. I don't make threats, and I don't get into public arguments, but I do make sure that people who hurt my family understand that their actions have permanent consequences." November 12, 1983, a drunk actor made a crude comment about Clint Eastwood's wife, thinking his rising career protected him from consequences. 6 months later, that career was over forever, and the actor was working as a bartender in Ohio. The difference was that Bradley Hartwell had disrespected the wrong man's family, and that man had spent 40 years in Hollywood learning exactly how to destroy someone who crossed that line. Some people make threats when their families are insulted, others make examples. Clint Eastwood made an example that lasted decades. Bradley Hartwell learned too late that some men's reputations for being tough aren't just about the characters they play on screen. They're about who they are when someone threatens the people they love. And when someone that tough decides to be merciless, merciless is exactly what they get: complete, permanent, and absolute. The way justice should be when family is involved. The way Clint Eastwood has always believed it should be. Some lessons are learned through experience, others are learned through the complete destruction of your life and career. Bradley Hartwell learned his lesson the hard way, but he learned it completely, and so did everyone else in Hollywood who might have been tempted to test Clint Eastwood's patience when it came to his family. They learned that patience has limits, and that crossing those limits with Clint Eastwood means discovering what merciless really means. In the most permanent way possible, the legend doesn't just protect himself, he protects what matters to him, and makes sure everyone understands the consequences of threatening it forever.